Hello there, Shortcuts. I'm going to start a new series of videos that I thought you might enjoy. It's called The Five Best. Clue is in the title. And pick a genre. I'm going to choose my view, a very personal view of the five best records that I own in that genre. And then invite you to add some other favourites to the mix to consider. So, and also to choose in the comments, if you would like to, what genre I should do next. So, this opening gambit will be a short view from me of my five favourite blues records. Now, figuring this out took a bit of time. And so I have some who nearly made the cut but didn't quite to talk through first. And then I'm going to show you my top five favorite blues records of all time. All right, so that's the scene setting. I hope that sounds interesting. All right, the five near misses that didn't quite make the cut are the following: Toward the Blues by Chain. I think it's 1974, an Aussie blues record on the Infinity label. Mick Taylor on grouchy vocals, Phil Manning on guitar, and others. This record is more of a hard boogie record than blues, but you can hear the grounding in the blues, and it really sounds like a band that made their mark in the pubs and clubs. It's dirty, it's grimy, it's a lot of fun. It didn't quite make the top five, but I like it a lot. Another that didn't make the cut, I mentioned this record in my overview of the Stax box set from Vinyl Me Please that I recorded a few months back. And it's this record, Albert King's sixth album, I'll Play the Blues for You. Why do I like Albert King so much? I obviously he's an astonishingly good guitar player, and he had this unique finger picking style, which was copied by a lot of blues artists, particularly British blues artists in the 70s, and Eric Clapton amongst it. But this record, recorded on the Stax label, is where blues and soul met, and for a microcosm made maybe the best music of that year. And the opening track, I'll Play the Blues for You, 8 minutes of just searing goodness. But because it's that Stax soul background, you get the horns and others kind of adding to it. And so a lovely record, but again, didn't make the top five. What else didn't make the top five? This. You'll know, if you're a Shortcuts listener, that I love Fenton Robinson, the king of the mellow blues, as he was described. This record, I think, is his best. 1974's Somebody Loaned Me a Dime. And on the, I think it's on Alligator Records, which is a really cool label. I'm pretty sure it was Chicago Blues. But I read recently that he was inducted into the Hall of Blues this year in 2023. I love this album, and so just pure pleasure when you listen to Fenton Robinson. Now, the second last record to not make the top five is this. Now, this is a gatefold. It is Then Play On, the third record from the extraordinary early blues version of Fleetwood Mac. Peter Green, John McVie, Mick Fleetwood obviously, Dominic Kerwin. Just an amazing band. And Then Play On I think, is the highlight of that earlier career. It's it's subtle, beautifully played. This Japanese pressing is my personal favorite. I've heard quite a few, but none are as good as this. Rattleshake Blues became a 20-25 minute epic in their live shows, and in their tour of America in 1968, which is where the germination of a record that did make my top five was born. So more on that later. But the extraordinary brilliance of early Fleetwood Mac, celebrated but not quite making the top five. And then finally, this record, so close, but it just didn't quite make it. This is Fathers and Sons by Muddy Waters, another really beautiful gatefold. But the cover art of this record is extraordinary. So there you have Muddy in the form of a angel reaching down and tempting the kind of Adonis figure below. Now, why is that interesting? Well, because the genesis of this record is some white Chicago musicians, Michael Bloomfield, Paul Butterfield, who, and I don't know exactly how, but they reached out to Muddy, and he came up in the south to Chicago, and they played a live concert, which is disc 1 of this 2-disc set. So the live concert is great. So 2 harmonica players, Muddy on guitar, singing. You've got great bass player in Donald Duck Dunn, Buddy Miles, who was in Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies on drums. It's just an amazing band. But what makes this record stand out is they immediately went into the studio and recorded a studio album, which is also, I think actually the studio album is disc 1 and the live album is disc 2. So you get the studio version and the live version of the Fathers and Sons of Chicago Blues. Pretty great. All right, those 5 did not make the cut. So here's my countdown, starting from 5, going to 1. My favorite blues albums of all time. All right, here we go. Firstly, in 5th position, Champion Jack Dupree's Blues from the Gutter. Look at that sleeve. This is a French press from the 70s. This is a record of murder, addiction, disease, despicable women, just everything about the blues. But it's played in this kind of almost honky-tonk style. It's a late 50s recording. It was his debut album. Jack Dupree was born in 1910. He was in his 40s by the time he recorded this record. He was brought up in an orphanage. His mum and dad were killed in a house fire when he was a baby. This record deals with some really amazing things. I'll some titles. TB Blues, Can't Kick the Habit, maybe the most famous, Bad Blood, but maybe the most famous song of all is Junker's Blues, where he describes the euphoric feeling of his, at this time, pretty rampant heroin addiction. And he compares it to all the other things in the world in unfavorable terms. And he describes himself as a junker. And in and amidst all of this is this guitarist, this guy, I can remember his name. I think it's Larry Dale, yeah. And he plays these most incredible, searing guitar solos that cut through kind of the piano blues. And yeah, it's just an astonishingly good album. And it's only number 5. All right. In 4th place, quite a different record. This is Indianola Mississippi Seeds by B.B. King. Look at that sleeve. Indianola, Mississippi, being where B.B. King was born. And if you can see on the sleeve here, this is a copy of his birth certificate, where you can see born in Indianola, Mississippi. I think that's his mum. Or maybe not, I'm not sure. But there are these incredible images. Look at the watermelon being torn apart on the back sleeve and being pristine on the front sleeve. So why is this record so great, considering this is B.B. King's 18th album? What artist's 18th album is their best? Well, one thing to note is that B.B. King himself said that this was his best record. This is the record that he was most proud of. If you look at the aficionados, they'll tell you that his live records, Live at the Regal or Live at the County Jail, are where the action is. But I love this album. He just had a huge hit in the late 60s with The Thrill Is Gone. And he effectively went into the studio with somewhat of an all-star band. Joe Walsh on guitar, dueling pianos in that each song had a different piano player. One suite of songs with Leon Russell, but more crucially, another suite of songs with Carole King on piano. And those Carole King songs are what makes this record stand out. Her playing with B.B. King's vocals and guitar playing is just sublime. And the engineer and producer of the record was a guy called Bill Zimmick. And he was an absolute artist when it came to string arrangements. So there are songs on this record, like the second song, You're Still My Woman, where the swelling strings are literally breathtaking. They are so good. And even probably more famously, Chains and Things, a song that's on side 2 that describes the feeling of waking up in the morning and looking at the news and realizing you're a black man in America at the turn of the 60s into the 70s, and that your day means that you're wearing these chains and things. And it's quite a powerful sentiment and amazing music. But what is also just beautiful about the song is that he plays, around about 3 minutes in, he plays a crescendo guitar solo, and you can quite clearly hear that he hits a bum note. But what happens is the live strings that are accompanying with an arrangement designed by Bill Zimmick, they respond to that bum note, and they play a string motif that he then follows in the guitar and weaves back into the song, and it continues on its way. And he listened to that and he decided that was the take that he wanted to put on the record. I love it to bits. And yeah, brilliant album, but only position 4 on my best of the blues. All right. Now we've heard this name already, but this record is my number 3. Muddy Waters, Folk Singer. This is the Acoustic Sounds gatefold pressing. Now, this was Muddy Waters' 4th record. Like a lot of blues musicians, he developed, his career developed later in life. And this record, called Folk Singer, was an attempt to try and corner some of the folk fans of folk music into the blues by making an all acoustic record. Willie Dixon is there, but the key to this is Buddy Guy plays acoustic guitar on this record. It is the only all acoustic record that Muddy Waters ever made. And it lends itself to an audiophile experience because it was impeccably recorded. Absolutely pristine recording. You can hear everything. It is amazing. And this pressing is the Analog Productions pressing. There's a number of versions, 45 PM or 33 RPM. This is the 33 RPM version. It's so intimate and so gorgeous. And so it had to make the cut. In this case, position number 3. All right. There's a hair's breadth between these next 2 records, my 2 favourite blues albums of all time. And I cannot believe that I'm going to call this record in second place. In second place, in my list of 5, is Hoodoo Man Blues by Junior Wells and the Chicago Blues Band. Junior Wells here on the sleeve. Again, I'm just going to show you. This is the Analog Productions gatefold. Now, in this case, this is a 45 RPM double LP. And I'll explain why typically I'm not a fan of 45 RPM because I just feel I like side 1 and side 2. I don't like having to, go get up after 12, 13 minutes of music, typically. But for this record, it's worth it. This record was released on the 10th anniversary of the Delmark label, a really incredible blues label. It became the biggest selling record in the history of the label. I think it may well still be the greatest selling record in their history. Recorded in this really intimate room. Buddy Guy, again, on electric guitar this time. His amp had blown, so he played through the amp with the organ. So the organ and the guitar are on the same amp. And what that does is it decreases the volume of the guitar. A lot of more modern electric guitar, when the guitar plays a solo, it's in the center, it's brought together, it's often doubled, and it's very strident and very pure. And the number 1 record in my list has some examples of that. But in this record, the acoustic guitar, the electric guitar is subtle. It's in the right channel, and you have to listen. It's part of the mix, but it's not dominating. What dominates is Junior Wells' voice and his harmonica. His voice is so strident. It's almost like he's eating the harmonica. You can hear him breathe. His breathing tone, the way he licks his lips, the way he smacks his teeth on occasion, are actually part of the experience of the song. When he leans back from the microphone, you might hear him groan, and you can hear it. And it's unbelievably well recorded, and so it really lends itself to an audiophile experience. I mean, the song there's a number of standards on here where they do really, really special things. But there's one here called Ships on the Ocean, the second song on side 1, where after every line, Buddy Guy plays a unique and distinct guitar solo after every line of the song. And if you just focus in on that, it is extraordinary. And when you put it all together, especially when Junior Wells launches into one of his trademark harmonica solos, where he's so close to the mic and it's so tightly amped that it distorts. The harmonica distorts. It's absolutely thrilling. I would kill to see this band in their pomp. If I could get a time machine and go back to see a band, it would be the Chicago Blues Band, fronted by Junior Wells and Buddy Guy in the late 50s. And again, a debut album, just amazing record. And my gosh, it's only number 2. So what could be better than that? Well, this record is better, I think. This is The Biggest Thing Since Colossus by Otis Spann. What a sleeve that is. And there he is on the back with his bicycle, somewhat incongruous to this incredibly dramatic sleeve. Now, this record does not get the acclaim of Folk Singer or Hoodoo Man Blues. It really doesn't, but it should. In 1968, Fleetwood Mac toured the US and they played a jam session at Chess Studios. It's actually called Blues Jam at Chess. It's a double album. You can go and buy it. One of the players that was there was an older guy, Otis Spann, Chicago blues player. I think he plays on the Fathers and Sons record that I mentioned earlier. The Fleetwood Mac, led by Peter Green, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood, struck up a rapport with Otis. So they decided to go to the studio and record an album. And that album is this. Now, one of my favorite stories about this record is that it was decided that Mick Fleetwood wouldn't be the drummer. He didn't play, he didn't come to the sessions, he didn't do anything. And one of Otis's mates, a guy called S.P. Leary, he plays drums, and my gosh, wasn't it a good decision? He is incredible on this album. There's a drum solo on the second song on side one called Walking, that when it drops, you're just smiling so hard. And I kind of figure that he was in the studio with the rest of the guys from Fleetwood Mac minus Mick Fleetwood, and he's thinking to himself, I better show these guys why I'm here. And he's phenomenal, really good. But there's 2 stars here. So Otis Spann sings and plays piano on every song. And he has this wonderful, playful Chicago blues tinkling style. And he's quite, you can tell he's having a ball. There are so many moments where you'll hear him say, let the old man have a turn. Or, I'm going to try and play you all some blues now. And he'll launch into this solo, which will just make you break into an automatic smile. But I mentioned in the previous discussion on Hoodoo Man Blues that Buddy Guy had this subtle, almost pure tone guitar style, whereas Peter Green, when he launches into his first solo on the opening track, My Love Depends on You, around about the 1 minute mark, you will find yourself thinking, has someone just turned that up? Has the volume changed? It is so powerful. His tone as a guitar player is exemplary. And you can tell that he's looking at Otis Spann sat there. I'm sure the two of them are staring at each other as they were playing, and they are both loving the experience. There are 10 songs in this album. I can recommend and utterly love all 10. But if I had to pick one, the second song on side 2, Ain't Nobody's Business, is a typical slow blues jam. But listening to to Otis Spann and Peter Green circle each other and spin magic out of that studio air, it is really something. And for that reason, my favourite blues album of all time is Otis Spann's The Biggest Thing Since Colossus. Now, what's awesome is you'll see here, this is can you see that? The music on vinyl version. It's available now. It's not very expensive, and it sounds spectacular. I had a first press. It is nowhere near as good. This pressing is sublime. It is not a record that makes it to the top of many blues lists. That's partly why I'm bucking the trend here. And I'm saying that The Biggest Thing Since Colossus is the best blues record ever made. Would welcome the comments below. Please subscribe if you find that interesting. Suggest another genre for me to have a think about and come back to you with a list. Tell me whether you liked or disliked. Is this a worthwhile exercise? Was it enjoyable or not? I'm open to it. Thank you so much for watching, and go play some blues. Thanks.